I'm Marlene Turner, 73 years old, and I've lived on Maple Street for nearly 4 decades. The morning started with a funeral for Doreen Huffington. She wasn't a close friend, more like someone you wave to at the grocery store. But at my age, every funeral lands a little heavier. By the time I got back to my block, the summer heat was starting to press down the trees, cast long shadows across the sidewalk. My cane clicked softly as I climbed the porch steps. I reached into my purse for my keys, just like I always did. But this time, the key didn't fit before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been told what's best for you by someone who never asked. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, trying not to let the shakiness in my fingers get the best of me. I tried the other keys twice more. Same result. I leaned into the lock, twisting gently, then firmly. No mistake, the locks had been changed for a moment. Just stood still, watching the quiet street. The hanging ferns on my porch swayed in the breeze, like they always did, the little ceramic turtle. By the front steps was still there. Everything looked like it belonged to me, except now it didn't. I took out my phone. My son, Oren, had insisted I get one of those touchscreen ones, just in case he picked up on the third ring. "Mom?" He sounded cautious. "The keys don't work," I said. He hesitated long enough for me to know he was expecting this call. "We changed the locks," he said, finally. "Jenny and I talked about it, and well, we think it's time you moved somewhere with more support." "My house has 1 floor," I reminded him. "The only steps are the 5 to the porch, and you know that he kept talking, but my ears were already ringing Sunny Hills. He said it like it was a place I should be grateful for. I knew that place. I'd visited people there over the years. The halls always smelled like floor polish and warmed over soup. I always left feeling heavier. "So, you're telling me I don't live here anymore?" I heard myself say it flat. Quiet, almost polite. "Mom, it's for your own good," he said. "You left the stove on yesterday." "I didn't leave it on." I told him. Jenny came by while I was on the phone in the other room. I could almost hear her walking through my kitchen, uninvited, checking for signs. I'd lost my grip. "Where are the keys?" I asked. "They're not necessary," he said. "We've set up a room for you at our place. Then we'll get you settled at Sunny Hills." It overlooks the garden. I held the phone away from my ear, closed my eyes in my mind. I saw Jenny packing up my china orange standing in the corner, appraising the furniture. I'd seen. The way Killian glanced at the house, heard him once say. "After Grandma, the house will be a steal." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "I'll find a place for the night, and tomorrow we'll discuss the matter properly, legally, before he could answer." I ended the call. I dialed a different number. "Barl, it's Mrs. Turner. Marlene, your high school math teacher." "Yes, the one who made you stay after class for extra problems, sweetheart. I need a little help, and maybe your professional services." 20 minutes later, a cab pulled up as I got in. I looked once more at my house. The sunlight warmed the porch. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. Not anymore. And as the cab pulled away, I wasn't thinking of defeat. I was already making a plan because I hadn't spent 35 years teaching young minds how to think logically, only to let my own son decide I was finished. The cab dropped me off in front of a glass-paneled building at the corner of Central and Oak, 8th floor office of Quill & Associates. I took the elevator up, steadying myself with one hand against the wall. My cane clicked softly on the marble as I stepped into the lobby. Barl's assistant greeted me kindly and offered tea. I sat in a leather chair, setting my purse on my lap and watching the city through the window. Barl Quill walked in wearing a navy blazer and glasses that gave her a no-nonsense look. But when she saw me, her whole face softened. "Mrs. Turner," she said with a smile. "Or should I call you Marlene now?" "Let's stick with Mrs. Turner for a bit," I said. We sat together and went through everything. I handed her a folder I'd prepared over the last 6 months. Bank statements, deed copies, withdrawal records. Notes in my handwriting, every dollar accounted for. She flipped through them, slowly nodding. Then she closed the folder and looked at me. "This is beyond troubling," she said. "What your son did, changing the locks, forcing you out, it's unlawful. And these account withdrawals, he's been siphoning your funds for years. I don't want to take him to court," I said, stirring my tea. "I just want to return to my house. On my terms." Barl nodded. "Then we'll draft a formal letter. Assert your ownership, spell out the violations, and include consequences if he doesn't comply. We'll send it to him and his office. Sometimes people need the weight of a letterhead to remember what's right." I looked at the sunlight bouncing off her framed diplomas and remembered the young girl in the 3rd row of my algebra class, always finishing quizzes with time to spare. Now she was a full-grown woman, building a name for herself. "I don't want to be a burden," I said. "Marlene," she said quietly, "you were the one teacher who made me believe I was capable of more. You tutored me on your lunch breaks. You didn't give up when I stumbled. Let me return the favor." That night, I stayed in her guest room. It was quiet and cool, with a soft bed and a small desk under the window. I placed one thing on the nightstand, a silver-framed photo of Lawrence and me standing outside the house the day we bought it. I ran my fingers across his smile. The next morning, Barl drove me to the bank. We met with a manager, a thin man in a starched shirt. I asked for full statements for the past 5 years and signed papers to remove Orrin as a trustee. Mr. Pratt raised his eyebrows but didn't say a word. Within 30 minutes, I had what I needed: paper trails showing steady withdrawals, all marked by Orrin. We drove next to First National. I kept a safety deposit box there. Inside were originals of my deed, my will, and something else. A small audio recorder. For the past 3 years, I'd quietly recorded conversations with Orrin and his family. Not out of spite, just caution. I could feel something shifting in them, and I needed to be prepared. Back at Barl's office, we laid everything out. She examined the numbers, the recordings, the property documents. "This is solid," she said. "Your ownership is clear, and the bank records leave little room for denial." I nodded. "He thinks I don't pay attention, that I forget things." "He underestimated you," Barl said. We drafted the letter together. It was firm, detailed, and professional. It outlined Orrin's unlawful eviction, the bank withdrawals, the legal consequences, and the demand for immediate return of access to my home. I asked Barl to add a line about emotional damages and another about missing or damaged property. Then we sent it out with a courier's signature, required not just to his house, but to his office too. Let his colleagues read between the lines. That evening, Barl poured us each a glass of wine. "To standing your ground," she said. "To remembering what I'm worth," I replied. She told me more about her divorce. Her ex-husband had left her for someone younger, and the months after had been difficult. "You always told us that every problem has a pattern," she said. "We just have to find the right solution." I smiled and raised my glass again. Still true. Later that night, she pulled up information on Sunny Hills. "Do you know what the basic package runs?" she asked. I shook my head. $3,000 a month, she said. Without medical care. With assistance, closer to 5. I stared at the number. "And he thought my pension would cover that." "He wasn't planning on using your pension," she said, sipping her wine. "He was planning to sell your house." It was hard to imagine. The house that Lawrence and I bought when I was 7 months pregnant. The house I kept after he died. The home I worked 3 jobs to pay off bit by bit. Now worth nearly $500,000, and Orrin had set his eyes on it. The next morning, Barl's assistant confirmed something new. Orrin had called in to work and requested time off for a family emergency. That meant he'd read the letter. I pictured him pacing around the house, checking drawers, maybe even calling Geneva in a panic. The deed gone, the bank records gone, the safe empty. Everything that mattered was with me now. Do you think he'll come clean? Barl asked. I think I said he's going to try to fix things without admitting anything. He doesn't like being backed into a corner. That afternoon, Barl received a message from Oren's office. He hadn't returned the company's calls. Geneva, too, had been asking around. Neither of them knew where I was. I didn't answer their calls. I needed space to think. In the quiet of her apartment, I sat by the window and watched the park below. Children on swings, a jogger with her dog, elderly couples arm in arm. It was the kind of everyday peace I used to find in my own backyard. Strange how quickly things could shift. But for the first time in a long while, I felt focused, clear-headed. The fear had drained away, and in its place was something steadier. That evening, Oren received his second copy of the letter delivered to his home. Geneva opened the door and signed for it, setting it on the table. When he returned from his car, already holding the first envelope, he saw the second waiting for him. They didn't speak for a moment. Then Geneva picked it up, skimmed it, and asked, "How is this happening?" "She has help," Oren said. "She's not alone." And for once, he was right. Oren sat in the quiet of his living room holding the letter for the third time that morning. He hadn't shaved. His shirt was still wrinkled from yesterday. The envelope from Quill and Associates rested on the table next to its twin copy, both delivered within hours of each other, one at his office, the other here at home. Geneva stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, staring at the words as though sheer force of will might make them disappear. "She can't do this," Oren said. Geneva didn't answer. "She barely knows how to use her phone, and suddenly she's got one of the most expensive attorneys in Bowers writing formal demands." "How does that even happen?" Geneva finally looked up. "Barl Quill. That name sound familiar?" Oren blinked. "She went to Bowers High." "Wait, she was one of Mom's students." Geneva walked over and handed him her phone. "She's not just any attorney. She's won 3 major cases this year alone. Corporate settlements, wrongful terminations. She's not cheap. If your mother's got her on her side, this isn't going away." Oren rubbed his face. "She's bluffing. There's no way she has all the paperwork. You said she keeps everything in that little box in her bedroom," Geneva said. "You tore that place apart. I didn't find anything." Geneva didn't say anything more. The room fell into silence. Killian arrived first, tie loosened sleeves rolled up. Tegan showed up a few minutes later, wearing leggings and a college sweatshirt, her expression unreadable. They all gathered in the living room, the 4 of them sitting in the same space where just weeks ago they'd talked about Sunny Hills and retirement plans like they were doing someone a favor. "She hired a lawyer," Oren began, "and she's threatening legal action. This could be very serious." "Yeah," Tegan said, settling into the chair across from him. "I read the letter. Honestly, I'm not surprised." Oren frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You changed the locks while she was at a funeral," she said, "then tried to convince everyone it was for her own safety." "We weren't trying to hurt her," Geneva snapped. "We were trying to be proactive. It's not safe for her to live alone." "But she was living alone," Killian said quietly, "and managing just fine." "Let's not argue," Oren said, holding up a hand. "We need to focus on what to do next." Tegan leaned forward. "Why don't you just give her the keys back and say you're sorry? That won't fix it," Geneva said, arms still crossed. "Not after the legal notice." "Then we're guilty," Killian said. "No one's saying that," Oren replied. Tegan looked directly at him. "What about the money?" Oren's eyes narrowed. What money? Tegan didn't flinch. "The withdrawals from her account." "The ones you've been making for the last couple years?" "I've seen the notices." Oren opened his mouth, then closed it. For a long second, he stared down at the carpet. "They were borrowings," he said finally. "Temporary. I was going to pay it all back once the house sold." "So it's true," Killian said. You were going to sell her house and use the money. It doesn't belong to you, Tegan said. It never did. The room was still for a while. No one moved. Outside, the sound of a passing car drifted through the windows. Geneva was the one to break the silence. How much, she asked. Oren looked at her. How much do you owe? He hesitated. A little over 200,000. Killian exhaled sharply. Tegan stared at him in disbelief. From what Geneva pressed? Investments, Oren said. Crypto. It was supposed to double within 6 months. I used some client funds to cover the last round, just to hold until the returns came through. Then it tanked. Geneva's voice dropped. You used client money. It was temporary, Oren said. It was all going to be paid back. My God, she whispered. You told me we were fine, that we were just reorganizing. You said I didn't want to worry you. Well, now we're all worried, Tegan said. Grandma's gone, you're in debt, and the only plan was to put her in a care home and sell her house. I need to talk to her, Oren said, standing up suddenly. Face to face. Explain everything. Do you even know where she is? Killian asked. She's probably with one of her book club friends, Tegan said. Try Elizabeth. Oren called 3 numbers in a row. Nothing. Each time he paced the length of the living room phone pressed tight to his ear. After the last one went to voicemail, he sat back down. She's not at any of their places, he said. She's gone underground. She's not hiding, Killian said. She just doesn't want to talk to you. Maybe try her lawyer, Tegan offered. Oren looked up sharply. That's actually not a bad idea. He called the office. A receptionist answered with a pleasant voice. The moment Oren introduced himself, her tone changed. Miss Quill is unavailable, she said, and has no intention of taking calls from Mr. Turner. We recommend he carefully review the letter he received. Then she hung up. He turned back to the room. They won't talk to me. Maybe it's time to stop trying to fix this your way, Killian said. Just give her the keys. Apologize. Own it. I can't, Oren said. Why not? Because if this goes public, I could lose everything. My job, my license, my reputation. Tegan looked away. Geneva stood up, walking slowly to the far side of the room. No one said anything for a long moment. I never wanted any of this, Oren said finally. I didn't see another way out. You saw one, Tegan replied. You just chose the one that hurt her. Later that night, the house was silent again. The dining room lights dimmed. Chairs pushed back under the table. Oren sat alone on the couch, the letter unfolded beside him. Geneva had gone upstairs without a word. Killian and Tegan had left. He didn't know what time it was. He couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. He just kept reading the same lines again and again. Illegal eviction, unauthorized withdrawals, civil code violations. Every word a mirror. The South Wind Cafe hadn't changed much. Same pressed tin ceiling, same wooden chairs that creaked if you leaned too far back, same smell of fresh cinnamon rolls and coffee grounds. I'd taken Oren there for hot cocoa when he was little. We used to sit near the front window where he could watch the cars go by while I graded papers. Now I stood by the hostess stand with Barl at my side, waiting for him to show up. He was already there when we walked in. Back table facing the wall, fingers drumming the side of a half-empty coffee cup. He looked tired, shirt-wrinkled shadows under his eyes. No trace of the polished man I used to see in magazines his firm sent out. He stood when he saw us, knocking over the cup. It spilled into the saucer and pooled across the tabletop. "Mom," he said, reaching out awkwardly. I didn't move. Barl gestured to the empty chairs. Let's sit. We ordered drinks. I asked for tea. Barl requested sparkling water, and Oren, still rattled, asked for another coffee. When the waitress left, I pulled a small black recorder from my purse and set it gently on the table between us. What's that for? He asked, eyes narrowing. For clarity, I said. I'd like to record the conversation. He gave a weak smile. Is that really necessary? I think so, I replied. Then I pressed the button. The recorder clicked to life, the red light glowing steady. Oren shifted in his seat. I didn't want this, he said quickly. I didn't mean to upset you. I thought it was time. You've had some close calls. You mean the stove, I asked? He nodded. That in the fall last winter, and you're right. I've had some moments, but nothing that called for changing the locks on my house without warning. He looked down at the table. I was going to talk to you after the funeral. You had time before the funeral, I said. You had time the week before and the month before that. He didn't answer. The waitress returned with our drinks. We all paused while she wiped the table clean. After she left, I reached into my bag and placed a folder beside the recorder. Inside were bank statements color-coded. Dates and amounts organized by account. You've been withdrawing money for years, I said, opening the folder and sliding it across to him. 500 here, 800 there. Always small enough not to raise alarms. But it adds up. He flipped through the pages slower with each turn. I was going to pay it back. You said that last year, I reminded him. And the year before that. It was temporary. You told Geneva and the kids that I was getting forgetful, I said. That it was time to take over my affairs. But you never once came to me and asked if I needed help. Barl sat quietly beside me, her notebook open, pen resting between her fingers. I'm sorry, Oren said. I really am. I looked at him for a moment. Do you remember how we bought that house? I asked. He furrowed his brow. You and Dad bought it just before I was born. Not exactly, I said. Your father worked at the library. I was teaching full-time. But the down payment came from my parents' estate, 40% in cash. It was my name on the deed. I paid the mortgage after he died. Took out a second loan when you went to college. His mouth opened slightly. I didn't know that. I know you didn't, I said. But you've been telling your family that it was Dad's house, that he left it to us. He said nothing. I reached into the bag one more time and pulled out a second recorder. I pressed play. It was his voice. My father bought this house. He worked his tail off for it. Now my mom's just sitting on 4 empty rooms. Then, Geneva's voice. She can't stay there alone. We'll be blamed if anything happens. Better to move her somewhere safe and sell it. Oren stared at the recorder like it might burn him. You recorded me, he whispered. For 3 years, I said. Not every moment, but enough. Barl closed her notebook. We're not here to shame you, she said. We're here to talk about next steps. I don't have anything left, he said. My reputation is shot. I owe over $200,000. My clients are starting to ask questions. Then it's time to face it, I said. Not with more lies, with a plan. Barl opened another folder. You have assets, she said. Your stake in the firm is still intact. We estimate it could bring in about $120,000. I built that firm, he snapped. I started it 15 years ago. You can keep it and lose everything, she said calmly. Or sell it and get a second chance. He leaned back in the chair, rubbing his jaw. What else? You can sell the car. Downsize your living expenses. Take a lower-paying job while you rebuild. He didn't speak for a long while. Just stared at the coffee growing cold in front of him. I want to keep the house, he said finally. It was never yours, I said, and it's not for sale. He looked up. His face was pale. So I go bankrupt. You accept the help that's being offered, Barl said, and you make it right. He was quiet again. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring of keys. He set them gently on the table. I picked them up and slid them into my purse. Then I looked at him and said, This isn't punishment. It's a boundary. He nodded without lifting his head. I need time, he said, and I need to tell Geneva the rest. You have 3 days, Barl said. Then we move forward one way or another. He stood to leave, then stopped. Did you ever think about selling the house? He asked quietly. No, I said. I lived in that house with your father. I raised you there. I took on extra work to keep it. That home is more than a roof. It's the one thing I built that no one could take away from me. He nodded, then walked out without another word. Barl and I sat in silence for a minute, sipping our tea. Outside, the streetlights were just starting to blink on. The envelope came 3 days later. Hand-delivered, no signature required. Barl opened it for me at the kitchen table, unfolding the single sheet like she already knew what it would say. Her thumb tapped the bottom corner where Orrin had signed in blue ink. It was a statement of financial intent. Voluntary sale of his firm shares. Formal withdrawal from his position. Agreement to restitution. He followed through, she said softly. I nodded, but didn't say anything. I just looked down at the page, tracing his handwriting with my eyes. It had been so steady when he was younger. I remembered the way he used to draw rocket ships on the edges of his homework, always in blue, always sharp and neat. Later that day, I got a call from Geneva. She didn't ask how I was doing, and I didn't offer. We've listed the house, she said flatly. Ours, not yours. We're moving somewhere smaller. I hope it brings peace, I said. She paused. He's been sleeping on the couch, she added. I told him not to come back to bed until he made things right. Then I guess he took that seriously, I replied. After we hung up, I stood by the front window and looked out over the yard. The maple tree was starting to turn, leaves scattered across the sidewalk. I thought about how many autumns I'd spent in that house raking leaves, baking pies, waiting for Orrin to call. Barl had suggested I take some time away. She said healing often starts somewhere unfamiliar. But I stayed. I wanted to be in my own kitchen, with my own mugs, surrounded by things that hadn't betrayed me. Still, something shifted. The next Sunday, I went to church. I wore my gray coat and took my usual seat on the left side, 2 pews from the back. A few people glanced over when I walked in. Polite nods, nothing more. The choir sang Blessed Assurance. I didn't sing along, I just listened. After the service, I stood by the coffee table in the foyer, watching the crowd drift out. That's when Tegan approached. She wasn't alone. Hi, Grandma, she said. Killian stood a step behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes cast downward. They both looked tired, like they'd been carrying something heavy for too long. Tegan handed me a folded piece of paper. This is from us, she said. No pressure, just read it when you're ready. I nodded. We didn't hug. I waited until I was home, sitting on the couch with a blanket over my lap. The note was handwritten, 2 pages. Tegan had written the first part apologizing for going along with things she didn't fully understand, saying she should have asked more questions. Killian's part was shorter, just 6 sentences. But one of them said, "You were always the one who showed up even when we didn't deserve it." The next day I took a walk. Just down to the grocery store and back, but it felt different somehow. The trees were thinning. There was space between the branches, space where light could come through. That week I got another call. this time from a reporter. Small local paper, one of those community features buried in the back pages. She'd heard about the petition I'd submitted about elder financial abuse and real estate fraud. Asked if I'd be willing to speak. "I'm not looking for attention," I said. "You might help someone else," she replied. "That's all." I told her I'd think about it. Barl and I met again that Friday. We sat at my kitchen table, same spot where she'd read Orrin's letter. This time, she brought something new: draft papers for a living trust. "I want you to have more control," she said. "This puts your home, your finances, your healthcare preferences, all of it in your name and protected." I signed every page without hesitation. She gathered her things and paused at the door. "He may never say everything you deserve to hear," she said. "But you've taken back what's yours. That matters." That night, I cooked a full dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken and green beans and a peach cobbler that didn't set quite right. I ate at the kitchen table with music playing low in the background, and for the first time in months, I didn't rush to finish. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside were 2 things. A check for a fraction of what he owed, but a start, and a short note in Orrin's handwriting. I can't undo what I did, but I'm learning to live without pretending. Thank you for not letting me destroy what you built. I folded the note and placed it inside the drawer where I keep old birthday cards. Then I went to the window and looked out at the street where the late afternoon sun stretched long across the sidewalk. The invitation came tucked inside a white envelope with a gold foil seal. It was addressed in Tegan's handwriting. Clean, steady lettering, just like her grandmother's used to be. I held it for a long time before I opened it. Inside was a single card, cream-colored, simple type. "Please join us for an evening of gratitude. No SVP deadline, no dress code. Just a date, a time, and a line that read, 'We hope you'll come home.'" I set it down on the counter beside the folded dish towel and the envelope from the water company. The house was quiet. Just the ticking of the clock and the hum of the refrigerator. The day of the gathering, I baked a lemon cake. Not because I planned to bring it, just because the smell felt right. I used the same glass pan I'd used for Orrin's graduation cake, the one with the scalloped edges and a chip on one corner. The frosting wasn't perfect, but I set it on the counter to cool and cleaned the kitchen in slow, thoughtful circles. At 6:30, I put on my navy sweater and gray slacks, the ones with the soft lining that didn't itch. I brushed my hair back, added a little rose lip balm, and slipped on the flats I kept by the back door. The walk down the street was quiet. The houses had their porch lights on driveways full. It smelled like barbecue and early fall. When I turned the corner, I saw the lights' first string lights stretched across the yard, glowing soft and gold. It was Tegan's house, the one with the stone path lined in hydrangeas. There were folding tables in the driveway and a large canopy in the backyard. I paused at the sidewalk. For a second, I thought about turning around. Then I heard her voice. "Grandma!" She was standing near the garage apron over her dress, holding a plate of sliced peaches. When she saw me, she smiled small at first, then wide. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," she said. I nodded. I wasn't sure either. She took the plate inside and came back with Killian. He offered me his arm. I hesitated, then slipped my hand through. The backyard was full. Neighbors, old church friends, a few faces I didn't recognize. There was food spread out on long tables, potato salad, ribs, 2 kinds of pasta. Tegan had arranged everything with small, handwritten signs. Vegan, no nuts, extra spicy. In the far corner, Orrin stood near a speaker adjusting the volume. He wore a plain blue shirt and khaki pants. No tie, no suit coat. He glanced over when I walked in and gave a quiet nod. I didn't wave back, but I didn't turn away either. Tegan brought me a plate and guided me to a seat under the canopy. The chair had a cushion. Small things, but they settled me. After we ate, she stood near the front and cleared her throat. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "Tonight isn't about announcements or holidays. It's just about naming things, hard things, good things, and the people who held us through both." There were murmurs of agreement. A few people clapped. She held up a small card. I asked everyone to write one thing they were thankful for. Just one. She picked the first card. "I'm thankful for second chances." Another, "For the neighbor who checked on me during the blackout." Another, "For my grandma who taught me how to start over." Killian came forward with a tray of candles. One by one, people lit theirs and placed them along the edge of the patio. No speeches, just small flames. When the tray came to me, I paused. Then I lit my candle and placed it beside the others. The light flickered but stayed steady. Later, as people began to leave, Tegan came to sit beside me. She didn't say much, just rested her hand gently over mine. "You know," she said quietly, "when I was little, I used to think you made the best French toast." I smiled. "You'd cut the crusts off," she added, "and always served it with strawberries." "I remember," I said. We sat a while longer, watching the candles burn low. On my way out, Oren approached. He stood just a few feet away, hands at his sides. "I didn't know she was planning this," he said. I nodded. "I haven't fixed everything," he added, "but I'm trying." I looked at him for a moment. His face was thinner, eyes softer. The stiffness in his shoulders had eased. Then, "Keep trying," I said. He stepped back to let me pass. As I walked home, the street was quiet again. Porch lights still on. One or two windows glowing with the soft blue of evening television. At the front door, I paused. The lemon cake sat untouched on the counter. I cut a slice and placed it on a small plate, the kind with the painted rim. Then I sat at the table, candle still flickering beside me, and took the first bite. It tasted just like it always had, familiar, simple enough. The letter came in a plain white envelope. No return address, just my name written in that same tidy hand Oren used when he was a boy. I found it in the mailbox one morning, tucked between a newsletter and a dentist reminder. I stood on the porch for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. No greeting, just a date, a time, and an address I didn't recognize. I ran my thumb along the edge. The paper smelled faintly of cologne and printer ink. Something told me not to throw it out. So I folded it, slipped it into my purse, and went inside to make tea. 2 days later, I followed the directions. It was a weekday, mid-morning, cool wind clouds moving in from the west. The address led me to a parking lot behind an office building near the courthouse. Small, brown brick structure with glass doors and a buzzer panel beside them. When I pressed the number he'd written, the door clicked open. I stepped inside. Oren was waiting near the elevator. He looked different. Tired, maybe, but calmer. He wore the same coat I'd bought him before he left for college. Still fit him. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I almost didn't," I replied. He nodded, then motioned toward the hallway. We didn't speak as we walked. Just the sound of our shoes on the polished floor, and the quiet buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. The room he led me to looked like a meeting space, round table, 4 chairs, a small pitcher of water, legal pads, a box of tissues. One wall had a window with blinds half drawn. He pulled out a chair for me, sat across the table, then slid a manila folder across the surface. I didn't open it. He took a breath. I asked Jenny not to come today, he said. She doesn't know I invited you. Not yet. I waited. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. But I didn't know how. And honestly, I was ashamed. Still, I said nothing. I wasn't trying to take your house, he continued. At least not the way it probably looked. The mortgage was in both our names because of the refi we did after Dad died. You remember? I nodded. That part was true. I panicked, he said. Work was drying up. Jenny's job had cut her hours. We were behind on everything. Killian's tuition, the car, the property taxes. He leaned forward slightly, voice low. I filed paperwork to have your portion transferred into a trust, one I could control. Temporarily, I told myself. Just until we caught up. But once it was done, it was done. He gestured toward the folder. That's everything. The trust agreement, the transfer, the notice that should have been mailed. I kept the copies because I didn't want anyone else to know what I'd done. I opened the folder, looked at the documents. My name was there, signed, but not in my handwriting. He saw the question in my face. I traced it, he admitted quietly. From a birthday card, one of the ones you used to tuck money into. We sat in silence. Outside the window, a bus pulled into the stop. People shuffled on and off. The sky was starting to darken. You forged my signature, I said. He nodded. You stole my house. I did. I closed the folder. I can't undo what I did, he said. But I've filed the reversal paperwork. The house is back in your name. Full title. No lien. The attorney reviewed it last week. He pushed another slip of paper across the table. A copy of the deed. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, but I wanted you to know the truth. I stared at the paper, at the words confirming what I'd quietly suspected since the day the key stopped working. You'll need to sign again, he added to finalize the reversal. Properly this time. I brought a notary. The door opened, and a young woman stepped in. Quiet, efficient, respectful. She watched as I signed, checked the ID, stamped the page. When she left, he stood up. I can give you a ride home, he offered. I shook my head. I'll walk. He nodded again, then opened the door and stepped aside. As I walked past him, he said one more thing. I've made a mess of a lot of things, but I never stopped needing your approval. Even when I didn't deserve it. I didn't answer. Just walked out into the cold and let the door close behind me. On the way home, I stopped by the bakery. Bought a single cinnamon roll, the kind with pecans and just enough icing to soften the top. Back at the house, my house. I set it on a plate and warmed it. The radio played a quiet instrumental. I sat by the window and watched the wind stir the last few leaves from the sycamore tree out front. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, deep and steady. And as I looked at the papers on the table stamped and signed, I realized something had shifted. Not healed, not forgotten, but shifted. The house was quiet that morning. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and poured it into my favorite mug, the one with the little chip on the handle. The sun had just begun to rise, casting pale orange light across the floorboards. I opened the front door, not all the way, just enough to let in the crisp air, and listen. Birds. A faint lawnmower a few blocks over. Nothing urgent. Nothing loud. The deed papers were still on the table now, neatly tucked into a folder I'd labeled myself. No lawyers, no phone calls, no voices raised. Just the slow, steady rhythm of getting back what was mine. There were things, still broken relationships that might never return to what they were. But the foundation at least was solid again. Later that week I planted begonias in the front yard, red and white. They'd always been my favorite, but I hadn't touched the garden in 2 years. The gloves were stiff with disuse, but my hands remembered what to do. I worked in silence, just the hum of the neighbor's sprinkler and the steady scrape of the trowel in the dirt. Killian stopped by the next Saturday. He knocked this time, said he was just out for a walk, and thought he'd see if I needed help with anything. He stood a little taller than I remembered. Same eyes as his father, but something softer around the edges. He helped me fix a loose shutter, and then asked if I still had that old lemon pound cake recipe. The one I used to make when he and Orrin were kids. I wrote it down for him on a yellow index card. He folded it carefully and slipped it into his wallet. Before he left, he turned back on the porch. "Grandma," he said, "I'm sorry for how things happened." I nodded. Sometimes there's no neat ending. Just the space between people narrowing little by little. I still don't hear from Orrin often. A birthday call. A Christmas card with Jenny's handwriting on the envelope. But that's enough for now. I don't need to relive everything. I just needed to know I wasn't crazy. That what I built mattered. That I wasn't invisible. The lock was changed back. The rugs were vacuumed. The framed photos returned to their places on the mantel. Me and James on our wedding day. Orrin in his graduation cap. Killian holding a fishing pole, one boot on the dock, the other dipped in the lake. One afternoon, I stood in the doorway and looked around. This house had held grief, anger, silence, and now something close to peace. Not perfect, but peaceful. If you've ever had something taken from you, your home, your name, your voice, just know this. Reclaiming it doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's a quiet morning, a steady breath, a front door that opens when you turn the key. Thanks for listening to my story. If any part of it reminded you of something you've lived through, something you've reclaimed, feel free to share it in the comments. And if you're still on your way back home, I hope you get there soon.